Great.
Paula, just give me the thumbs up. We've got Helen and Jody. So I'll ask everybody else to mute your microphones just so we can avoid any barking dogs or crying kids or whatever may be going on in your household right now. I just have to keep my cat at bay. He keeps wanting to walk across the computer screen. So, and then speakers, when it's your turn, just click on your microphone and we'll be all set to hear you. So awesome, we'll get started. Thank you so much for joining in today on our first webinar on mental health. I think that's, just as important as any other topics that we've covered in the last couple days on the business end of this pandemic, the physical fitness end of this pandemic, and things like that. My name is Laura Schneider-Smith. I'm the Manager of Events and Marketing at the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined by my colleague Elena, who's recording it, and Laura's probably writing another newsletter or preparing for another webinar. We've all been working from home, busy in our own ways, but working remotely thanks to this GoToMeeting. So TGIF, right? What's that mean anymore, right? Don't even know what day it is. I'm somewhat grounded by my work schedule at the chamber, but my kids, my husband, my friends, we don't even know what day it is. And I think that's totally normal. Like this whole pandemic is overwhelming. And I think that's okay. We've tapped into these experts here and they all have some recommendations for us and they all come from different angles to help us with some solutions. So we've got 4 guests with us today. We've got Jody Costello from U Squared Body and Mind. Thank you so much. We've got Paula Norbert, a longtime friend of mine and a Kennebunk resident, and now she's the pastor of Union Church in Biddeford Pool. We also have Helen Torgelson. You probably know her as the H in the HB Provision store, but she is also a doctor of core education and she is a certified professional coach. Lastly, we'll have Father Andrew jump in. He's of Kennebunk and he is the pastor at St. David's Church. So we'll get started with Jody.
Thank you. So I'm going to do not much talking. I want to take you through a few exercises, but what I'm mostly discussing is mindfulness and how that can help deal with the stress and anxiety that surrounds, everyday life, but especially right now. So let me start with a definition that was written by John Kabat-Zinn, who is kind of the godfather, so to speak, of mindfulness, coming from kind of the religion of Buddhism to a more secular space. He was using mindfulness at UMass Amherst for those patients that doctors couldn't really help very well, especially around pain issues. So he thought mindfulness would be a really great way to help them, and it has. So he developed this definition, which I think is a really good way to describe mindfulness. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmental. So it's really about being present. And how this helps with stress is that it kind of is all about stopping that hamster wheel of thoughts that are going on in our minds. And it's all about those stories that we start to tell ourselves. So, we might have fear, we might have anxiety, we might have sadness, whatever it is, but it's really the stories around those feelings that tend to cause a lot of the stress and the anxiety. So it's about kind of stopping these stories, allowing you to take a pause, allowing you to take a breath, allowing you to step out of those stories for a few minutes. It's not about not feeling your emotions. It's actually quite the opposite. It's about actually recognizing your emotions and letting them be there and feeling them. But it's about letting go of the stories that surround them. So, and we can talk more about this later in the question and answer period, because I really want to get to the exercises. So I'm going to take you through 2 different techniques that can help bring some calm to your body and to your mind. One is just going to be a simple breathing exercises, and breathing exercises are really great for a really quick way to center yourself and to help that anxiety and stress. And I can go into it a little bit more deeply, but it takes you out of that stress response and gets you into more of the kind of rest and digest response in your nervous system. So breathing is a really quick, easy way to do that. And the second will be a really short mindfulness practice, no more than 5 minutes, again, to bring the attention and your focus to something other than those stories and get you off of that hamster wheel. So we will start with a breath exercise. So if you are sitting in a chair, I'm sitting in a room, sitting in a chair, see if you can move forward enough so that both feet are on the ground. And then sit up nice and tall. I would say not uncomfortably tall, but just so almost feel like you have a string going from the top of your head up towards the ceiling, just kind of lengthening out your spine. And then just let your shoulders relax. And for this breathing exercise, feel free to leave your eyes open or close your eyes. It's completely up to you. And as we go through any of the exercises, really focus on your comfort. And if even sitting this way doesn't feel comfortable for you, find another way to sit. So don't struggle with uncomfortableness just to do what I'm saying. Find your own point of comfort. So we're going to do 3 rounds of a breath, and it's just really as simple taking a deeper breath. So I'm going to count to 5 as you breathe in, and then I'm going to count 5 as you breathe out. And we'll just do that round 3 times. And as you breathe, try to think of breathing from your belly, almost like blowing up a big balloon in your belly. And then as you breathe out, letting that balloon, all the air out of the balloon. And then as you breathe in again, blowing up that balloon in your belly and letting all the air back out. So we'll start on just a quick out breath for the first one, and then I'll start to count as we breathe in. So find that comfortable seat, and either, as I said, either close your eyes or you can find a spot just to focus on in front of you. Just try not to have your eyes wandering all around the room for this. We'll start just by breathing out. So take a breath out. We'll start by breathing in, and breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then breathe in again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and one last time. In 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then just let your breath kind of return to its natural rhythm, staying for a moment with your eyes closed or with them focused on that point in front of you. And just notice how your body and mind feels right now. Notice if there's any difference from when we first took those first few breaths. Great. So this will help you arrive, help you come to the spot. Hopefully, did anyone, I guess you can just raise your hands maybe, we don't want everyone to click off. Did anyone feel that shift them to a different perspective? If it did, just raise your hands. Yeah. Great. So let's take it one step further. Let's do a slight, I know I only have about 10 minutes, so we'll just do a quick 5-minute mindfulness practice to follow up on this breath practice. So stay in that same nice, comfortable seat that you have with your feet on the ground, sitting up nice and tall, but not uncomfortably so, like I said. And if you feel comfortable closing your eyes for this, that would be great. But again, if you don't, that's okay too. Just find a spot, maybe on the desk in front of you or somewhere on the floor in front of you that you can just focus on. Not so much so that you're staring at it intently, but just so that you have a soft focus so that your eyes aren't wandering around the room. And for this mindfulness practice, I'm just going to have you bring your attention to your body. And lots of times when we bring attention to different parts of our body, it can help to calm those stories and those things that are going on in our mind. So let's first bring attention to the breath. And just like before, we're going to just see if we can focus on our breath, but this time, just let your breath come in and out of your body in just a natural way. As you let it just come in and letting it go out, see if you can notice the breath coming in and going out of your body. See if you can physically feel some part of your body receiving that breath. See if you can feel it maybe coming in through your nose. Maybe you can feel it going down through your throat. Maybe you can feel it at your chest or your belly. Maybe see if you can pick a point where you feel it most and just notice the breath that comes in and goes out of your body. Wherever that point is for you, that's okay. Just notice it. As we're doing this exercise, if your mind starts to wander into thinking about things and maybe worrying about something, maybe your to-do list of what you have to do for the rest of the day, know that that's okay. But see if you can just notice that happen and bring your mind back to your breath and the feeling of this breath, or the feeling of the focus at that moment that I'm talking about. And your mind may wander a million times, and that's okay. Just notice and see if you can bring it right back. And see if you can feel your feet. See if you can notice your feet either in your shoes or your socks. Maybe they're directly on the ground. Just notice them. Notice what they're touching. At any point during this, if you don't really notice anything or don't feel anything, that's okay too. Just bring your attention back to your breath. Next, see if you can feel where you're sitting in your seat. Maybe you can feel where your legs touch the seat or your sit bones touch the seat. So see if you can notice all those points of contact where your legs touch whatever you're sitting on. And wherever you're holding your arms and your hands, see if you can notice those points of contact, whether the arms and your hands are in contact with your legs, and maybe it's the arm of the chair, maybe it's a table or a desk. Just notice every place where your arm is making contact with the surface or with your body. And moving up your body a little bit, see if we can go into relaxation mode a little bit and just let your shoulders relax. See if all those muscles in your shoulder can just soften a little bit. Let them come down and away from your ears. And see if you can relax the muscles of your face, starting with your forehead, moving down to your eyes, letting your cheeks relax, your jaw relax, and letting your lips relax, letting the tongue and your mouth just relax. See if you can just now come back to your breath with a little bit more relaxed state. And see if you can just watch your breath come in and out as you sit here, knowing at this moment there's nowhere else to be except for right here. Also knowing if your mind does start to go somewhere else, just notice that and bring it right back to this breath and to this moment. And in just a moment, you'll hear a bell ring 3 times. After the 3rd ring, just take a deep breath and open your eyes whenever you're ready. It's hard for me. I don't see everyone's face on the screen at once, so I can't see where everyone is. But was that anyone's first time doing some mindfulness practice? Everyone had done it before? Yeah. Great. Okay. What are some words, kind of that one word about how you feel right now? Does anyone want to offer that?
I didn't realize how absolutely tense I was, and now that went away with the breath work and just centering myself. Wow, that was amazing.
Great to hear. Anybody else?
You know, it really did help me to be in the present moment and to be aware, like Laura said, that you don't realize all that we're carrying in these days, and just to allow ourselves to rest, and for me to reflect on all the places in my body that are holding the tension of the day. So thank you.
Thank you. Great.
I do something similar to this on a daily basis, actually. I practice, it's kind of a Christian meditation called centering prayer. And before I begin 20 minutes of, actually, the process here is that for 20 minutes, the object is to become aware of nothing. But part of that, the beginning of that, is breathing exercises to kind of get you relaxed and ready for that process. And it's very calming.
Yeah.
I actually feel more focused. Like, I think your brain, like our brains, at least I think I can speak for both Laura's, our brains are going 1,000,000 miles a minute. And that actually allowed me to pause. And I actually felt more focused after it on what, you know, instead of all the kind of the white noise, hearing just what I should be focused on.
Great. Yeah, and it doesn't take, I think that's what I try to emphasize. It's great if you can do a longer practice, but these little short practices, even just the 3 breaths, can really be helpful towards regaining focus or helping with that anxiety. And, you know, longer practices can include everything from what you just mentioned with the Christian meditation to, you know, there's all different forms, but however you want to do it, to take that break, to take that pause, it's very helpful. So I don't want to take too much more time. I know we have other speakers for 10 minutes, so I'll be, you know, take questions or comments afterwards too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jody. That was incredible and a great way to kick this off. Next, we'll turn to Helen. Oh, I'm sorry, Paula. I forgot where I was.
That's okay. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jody, for that wonderful practice of meditation or mindfulness. I just want to say that I recognize that for many, many people, there's a lot of fear at this time. The fears are real, whether about people personally worrying about becoming sick or losing a loved one, the loss of income, feeding one's family. You know, I just am aware that all of that is present in these days. We don't know what the future is going to hold. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and a lot of people are carrying that, I think, in their minds, their bodies. And I've talked to a lot of people who are really struggling with all the complexities of what this time means. And I think it's important, first of all, to honor all of that, the fullness of that, and the people that we're in touch with or living with. There's a lot of stress. But all the more reason, of course, to find what practices, what ways we can take care of ourselves at this time, and to reach out for help, whether it's concrete help with people who are worried about their businesses or income, but also in terms of social connections, even though we can't be together, that we can reach out and ask each other for support when we need it. Friends, time to laugh, whatever it is that is important to do to, you know, really calm our minds, our bodies, and our spirits at this time. So just a couple thoughts I have about that. One, I have been thinking a lot about balance. When this first happened and a lot of people started having to stay at home or work from home or homeschool their kids, worrying about elderly parents that they can't go in and visit, I found a lot of people trying to fill their time up right away with lots of other activity. And granted, many of us are working from home and it is busy, but filling our times up with too much activity or screen time can just add to our anxiety. And I have found that to be true in my own life. They say that you kind of got to follow a schedule, because we could just, for those of us working, we could just keep working into the evening, or we could be kind of feeding off all the stress of the news right now. And I think it's important to find balance, because we've heard all the stories about how increased screen time among adolescents these days is adding tremendously to heightened anxiety and depression. And I think that's happening as well in the general public right now. So, you know, I encourage people to limit their screen time. And maybe, yes, we all have a responsibility to know what's going on in the news, but maybe just to say, I'm going to spend a half hour a day. And it may take a little bit of discipline initially, but we've got to kind of find, I think balance is so critical in all the ways that we care for ourselves. I also think, and I heard Jody use this language about intentionality, I think we have to be especially intentional at this time about self-care and balancing the care for our minds, and as I mentioned, our bodies, our spirits. A lot of people are trying to take time, whether it's for meditation, for prayer, for yoga, taking time out to exercise every day. I know that's a highlight of our day. My husband's a teacher working from home, and I'm a minister, as Laura said, and we look forward to, where are we going to walk today? What time are we going to get out? And we'll walk even if it's cloudy or a little bit rainy, just not the torrential rain. But I have to say, getting out of doors, I think a lot of people are saying that's extremely helpful. And guess what? It gets us away from the screens, the work, the housework, all of that. So I think that's really important. I think we have to find some time for quiet. And that's really hard. There's a lot of noise out there, right? I mean, I know there's noise in connection to all the screens and the ways that we take things in, but to really allow ourselves to find some quiet each day. And that can be in the centering prayer that I heard someone mention, meditation, just pause and do some breathing. It's overwhelming at times, I know. And so I just invite people, and in the beginning, it may feel uncomfortable, but finding the quiet center in ourselves is so important. Obviously, as a minister, I'm aware of the many communities of faith that are not able to gather in person right now. My own church, it's a real challenge to not see people in person. My friends in the Jewish community and all the other churches, we're trying to find alternative ways to connect with our members and to reach out to the wider community. So I think lots of churches have things online. I know we host our services online, music. But for people for whom that's a part of your life, a person of faith, I think having practices of prayer, especially right now, are really important. Centering prayer, just other ways that we can feel a connection to something bigger than ourselves. I was thinking a lot about the serenity prayer and how ideal. That's something that's been used a lot in AA and other kind of support groups. And many of you probably know that, but I think it's a wonderful way to start our day because there is so much that's out of our control. And for those who don't know the serenity prayer, it's just very simple. And it just reads, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think at this time, that's so true. We have to accept what we cannot change and we cannot control. But then in the things that we can control or look for help or resources, that we look to do those things. And then just to seek wisdom in all of that, to know where that balance is. I heard someone recently speak about gratitude. And I have to say, every day I call a few people from my church. I'm kind of working through all the members of my church and I talk to them. And so many people say to me, I feel so grateful. I'm grateful that I'm safe, I'm healthy, I have food. But I know that not everybody feels that way right now. People are afraid. They may not feel like they have enough food in the cupboards. They don't know when their next paycheck is coming. But to the degree that we can find something to be grateful for each day, it's so important. I've heard that fear and gratitude cannot coexist in our minds at the same time, that the way the neurological pathways in our mind work and in our brains. And so I think, again, if we can just have a little bit of time in the course of our days to think, what am I grateful for? And take stock of that and maybe just be intentional about focusing on that and finding even one thing each day that we're grateful for is so key. I also want to just speak about hope. And again, we don't know what the future holds, but we have been through difficult times before. Many of us lived through 9/11 and all that meant. And I remember having a truly visceral reaction in the aftermath. I wasn't sleeping well in the weeks after. I was expecting our daughter and I was very worried about the pregnancy. And it was scary. We didn't know what was going to happen. And yet we came through that time. And I know right now that it's very hard. There are people who've lost loved ones. There are people who are genuinely afraid. But somehow, if we can believe that we are connected to one another and that there are reasons to be hopeful. This is the season of Easter. It is the season of Passover for our Jewish brothers and sisters. And I think for all people of faith, whatever their tradition, and for people who describe themselves as spiritual, hope is a centerpiece of that. The hope of new life in springtime. All we have to do is look out the window. I know we got snow coming tomorrow morning, which I can't believe, but to focus on that sense of hope and the coming of our flowers opening and more green grass and warmer days ahead. To believe in something larger than ourselves, and that even though we cannot physically be together, that so many people are giving us reasons to hope. So many people are sharing generously. They're putting their lives literally on the line to care for people who are sick and dying. All the people working at the grocery stores. There are so many people who are going above and beyond to lift our spirits. And I think we have to hold on to that. And we should focus on that, the hope in the midst of this difficult time. Again, you know, as a minister, I believe that God does walk with us in this, in our pain, in our sorrow, in the suffering, that God is with us in all of those who are reminding us of, you know, just the promise of love and peace and incredible generosity of spirit. And the last thing I want to say is don't overdo it. You know, I started talking about balance. I know I have family members who've struggled with different mental health, depression, anxiety. I know how overwhelming it is when somebody does not feel well, whether it's physically or emotionally or spiritually. For someone to say to them, oh, do this, even though we know there are many wonderful practices, it can be overwhelming. And so I just invite you maybe to pick one thing each day and slowly weave it into your schedule, whether it's going out for that walk or carving out 5 minutes of quiet, whatever that is. But don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty. But over time, I think we can weave in something each day. And it's like exercise, really. The more we do it, the better it feels. And I think the more we'll want to do that. But I understand there's a lot of people with good intentions will tell you all these things we're going to share today. Pick the thing that is most life-giving for you. Pick the thing that will bring you some sense of calm and peace in your day. So I just thank you for your time, and I just send all my best to everybody for whom this is a challenging time. And Laura and I both have seniors in high school right now, and it's been a particularly hard time for all these young people. And so my heart goes out to so many of them as well. This is a time of their lives, as my daughter and some of her friends have said, they were born in the months after 9/11, and now they're graduating at this time. And so I just want to hold out, just send out my love and all my thoughts to all the young people. So thanks, Laura. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Paula. That was awesome. Thank you. It's all about balance, and that's hard on a good day, let alone this, but it's so, so important. So thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Helen, where are you?
I'm here.
Hello.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I'm very honored to be part of this group, and Jody and Paula, your words were right on. I realized, Jody, how tired I am when I started to relax. So it was kind of interesting, and I think. I wanted to speak about some of the things we've already talked about, but again, I think it's a big topic. I think the fear, the stress, the anxiety, I think it's a big topic for all of us. It's so real, and it's just happening. Someone I read, they said, for some people, this is just a sprinkle, that their lives are pretty calm, and for more it's how do I fill my day, and for others it's like a hurricane, and there's so much to do every day, and it just fills us with the fear and the anxiety. I as a local store owner, that it's a market, so we're considered essential. We're working as fast as we can and trying to do as much and be able to change and grow with the times as fast as we can. And some days it feels like it's changing hourly. And so it was really interesting that I was starting to feel just almost crazed. I was feeling such a high level of anxiety, almost manic, to the point where I just was working all the time, and there was so much to do, and never felt like I could get it all done. And then there was also the fear: would we make enough money? Would we have enough? What's going to happen next? What new rule are they going to put in place? What about the people that are dying from this? This is real. And just over and over and over, I was just feeling all these feelings and whatnot, and I wasn't even really conscious of it because I was so wrapped up in it. And I've talked to other people in the last few days about it, and they've understood it and have been there, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, I, who supposedly know how to take care of myself and do those things, got caught up in this. And here I was feeling this this anxiety. I never, like, I could talk about anxiety, but I never really felt it to this degree. And it was a great learning experience to find it. And the other thing I found was that I couldn't slow down. I couldn't sit and meditate. I exercised a little, I walked a little, but I was so worried about all the things I needed to get done that that I really wasn't able to create that balance. My food was off, everything was kind of off, and I was just focused on this one thing of getting through each day, and but yet not knowing, too, the uncertainty. So all of a sudden, it all kind of came to me what was happening, and I reached out to a friend and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm feeling so much fear and anxiety, and my stress levels are off the chart. Help!" And and she's an old friend. We got sober together about 30 something years ago, and she said, among other things, she said, talk about it, start talking to people about it, talk about what you're feeling. And I kind of dreaded it, but I knew that I needed to do that. And so I did start talking about it, and just being able to do that and being able to start being aware and having awareness of what I was feeling, because I was so caught up in the day-to-day and getting everything done and doing it right and doing the best we could do for our community, that I just lost track of everything. So by talking about it, I was able to come to terms with what was going on, and I was able to turn it around. And I went from feeling the fear of, oh my gosh, you know, we're not going to make enough money, to, you know what, we're doing okay, and customers are coming in the store. And I started looking at other fears of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to us? You know, look at all these people that are dying, and, you know, and I was able to turn it around. But look at all the people that have recovered from this virus. Look at all the people that are doing so well, and that I was just able to, all of a sudden, I felt a little lighter, and I felt a lot more at ease. And instead of sort of feeling like I was carrying the world on my shoulders, I was able to get to a place of gratitude. And I stepped in the shower the other morning, and I looked up at the water, and I thought, we have beautiful, clean, warm water, and I can get in the shower and enjoy that. And if that's all that's good today, then that's good enough. And just really being able to take all the fears and anxieties and turn them around and look at, what do I like about this situation? What do I like that's happening right now? Because there's definitely things that are kind of nice about things that are happening. I think for myself and others that there's things we found in life. You know, the waters are cleaner, the air is clearer. There's just all kinds of things that are improving as a result of this situation that we're in. So I think a lot of what I wanted to talk about was just that, what is running in our minds? What is that monkey mind that we have going on? And is it just, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have enough money. Oh my gosh, I know someone that's sick. Oh my gosh, people are dying. Oh my gosh, you know, my whole life is different. Oh my gosh, I'm supposed to teach my children and I have no idea how to do that. Oh my gosh, what? And that it's really to be able to take those situations and turn them around and look at, you know, I may be in a situation where I don't know how to feel. I don't feel confident in teaching my children, but but I'm not like comfortable with the whole situation of it. But there's so many things that I am doing right. And it's looking at, what are you doing right? What is good about this situation, about having your child at home? What have you learned about your child that you didn't know? And I think that by just taking those situations and turning them around and looking at, but what is on the other side of that? Because I think once we can turn that around and feel that, all of a sudden it feels better. And I think that there's just so much opportunity for that, for shifting our mindset. And the thing I like about focusing on shifting my mindset is that I don't have to really even take time out of my day to do it, that it just happens as I'm going through my day. And I might be walking down the stairs or stepping in the shower or, turning on my computer, or who knows what I'm doing. And all of a sudden I get this thought, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. I have a warm, cozy place to live, or I have, water, or, my kids are around with me and my kids are safe and I'm safe. And so whatever it is, I find that I can spend my day looking at how can I turn this around. And as I've been able to do that personally, my stress level has decreased, my anxiety's decreased. I'm not nearly as fearful as I was. I feel much more relaxed about what's happening. Yes, it feels like Groundhog Day. It's kind of the same thing happening day and day and day. And that's okay too. There's something about that. There's something about having a little bit of certainty in this time of uncertainty. So I was trying to think what else I wanted to talk about. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that in turning all of this around, and Paula mentioned it a little bit, is that, and what I've always known is, faith and fear can't live in the same house. And meaning that you can't be in a place of fear and in a place of faith at the same time, that one rides over the other. And I've heard it referenced as well to fear and well-being, that you can't be in a place of well-being if you're in a place of fear. And happiness, and really all those things, because when we're in fear, and we can only have one thing happening at a time. And so I just would like to encourage anyone who's feeling any of the fear and the anxiety to take a break, to talk to somebody about it, call a friend, talk to a spouse, really anyone. If you don't feel confident talking to anybody, write it in a journal. Just write it. Just somehow transform it into something else. And then allow yourself that as you're going through the day, that and that things pop up as we know they do, to allow yourself to turn it around, to turn it into a different place. And just to allow yourself to hopefully feel a little bit lighter and a little bit brighter as you're going through your day. One more thing I just wanted to mention. I mentioned it earlier. I am a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 32 years. And I go to AA meetings as often as I can. One of the gifts of this whole pandemic is that I am able to go to a meeting almost every day, because I just get on my computer and I'm in a Zoom meeting with all the folks that I normally meet with up at the church. So my point of bringing that up is that I also know that it's a time when people are tending to possibly drink too much. And that I just want people to understand that there is help out there, and there are still ways to get help right now if you've kind of tipped the corner and gone from use to abuse, and if it really feels like it's impacting your life. I'm not here to make any judgments. I just want to remind people that there are still opportunities to go to meetings, to connect with people, and to get help when alcohol abuse becomes an issue. I welcome any phone calls. Anybody needs to talk about alcoholism or any other things. I just want you to all know that there is help if it's an issue for you. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Helen. That was wonderful. And I think I can speak for all the presenters here too, is you've all offered to be a contact for anyone that's struggling out there. So I think just half the battle is reaching out. All right, last up, there's Andrew. There he is. Thank you so much for hopping in after
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate your flexibility. And I've caught, just the tail end of Jody's and everyone else's presentations, and it's so wonderful to hear the different ways in which we all kind of come to this question of how we stay mentally and emotionally and spiritually well. And it's wonderful to see all the different pieces coming together, because I feel like we're all really coming at the same kind of core truths from different paths, which is so wonderful. I wanted to talk about stories because I think one of the things that makes us human is our capacity to tell stories to ourselves and about ourselves and to one another. And I think what is one of the ways that this time, this pandemic is so challenging to us is that it has disrupted a story that we tell. We have told ourselves a story that our lives go a certain way and that we are more or less in control of how things go. We work hard, and so we earn a good living and have access to the things we want to do and have the time that we want to do to do what we want to do with it. And we're in charge of ourselves. And this virus has shattered that story. And so the challenge for us is, what do you do when your story isn't big enough? What do you do when the story that you've told to yourself and to the world about yourself and about the world doesn't fit with reality anymore? When the truth of the world out there doesn't really match the story that you're telling. And we have options there. One of them is to insist on the truth of our story even when the world doesn't fit it anymore. And that is, in smaller degrees, that can get you through the day. Telling yourself, well, I'm still in charge, even if the world is falling apart around me. To a small degree, that can get you through the day. But eventually, having a story that doesn't fit the way the world is, that doesn't take into account the truth of the world, will ultimately fail us, because we will be confronted again and again with the disconnects between our story and the reality of the world. And so one of the things we need to do is to be gracious with ourselves and understand the grief that we have, that we are mourning the loss of a story, of a future, of a summer, a spring that was supposed to be. I know in our house we're really mourning the loss of the end of the school year. I've got 2 kids in elementary school, a kindergartner and a first grader, and the fact that they're not getting to go back and see their friends and their teachers again, that's a real that's a source of grief, a source of mourning. And so the question is, how do we tell a story about this time, about this moment, that takes into account the fact of that grief, the fact of all the things that have gone wrong, all of the very real anxiety and fear that we live in. And I love that we've all picked up on that disconnect between fear and hope, or anxiety and wholeness, that somehow that fear has this way of infecting us and kind of taking us over. And as Helen just said, kind of when you're in a place of fear, that's it, that's all you know. The Gospel of John says that perfect love casts out fear. And I feel like that's just another way of saying a lot of what we've been saying, which is that when we operate out of a place of a story of love, a story that actually can hold the world together, then there isn't room there for fear. And I want to be cautious and say that, make sure that I'm not saying that, and so therefore, if you're afraid or if you're feeling anxiety, there's something wrong with you. That's absolutely not the case. And I think everyone here would agree with that really, our brains have the response of fear and anxiety because of situations like this. This is a time for anxiety. That's okay. It's okay to feel anxious. it can overcome you. It can overwhelm you. And that's when it becomes challenging. And that's, again, when the importance of storytelling becomes that much greater. Because we need to be able to tell a story, as I've been saying, that takes into account the reality of the brokenness of the world, and also the fact that that is not the whole story of the world. The way we're going to get through this is by understanding and knowing and believing that there is a greater reality than the fear and anxiety around us. Pastor Paula talked about how, we're in this holy springtime season. In the Christian church, we've just had the big celebration of Holy Week and Easter, and I know our Jewish siblings are in the midst of, I think it's still in the midst of Passover, and celebrating that kind of life out of death moment. And there's a reason why in springtime we always have these kinds of celebrations. It's because the whole world, the whole creation seems to be singing to us this story that life comes out of death. And the beautiful thing about these stories, and I'm going to speak out of my own story here, and I know that there are many faith traditions that have their own stories in this. So if this is something that speaks to you, wonderful. And if it doesn't, I'd love to hear about where your faith story finds this. But in the Christian tradition, we talk about Easter, but you don't get to Easter, the story of Jesus's resurrection from the dead, without Good Friday, which is the story of Jesus's death. And those are that's a reminder that death is real, that anxiety and fear, these are real, and they are to be respected and fully experienced, but also not allowed to hold sway. That the final word, the final truth about the world and about ourselves is not a truth of fear. It's not a truth of anxiety, of death. That we are not just people who are doomed to die, that there is something more about us, something more that is life-giving and love-giving. And in the church, we talk about eternal life and we talk about all these things, but I think what we're getting at, that I think the average person without a particular religious affiliation could understand, is that what we're really saying is that when you get down to the bottom of things, it's good. We have this beautiful story in the book of Genesis about creation, and God makes the light and the sky and the earth, and it's this beautiful sort of mythic metaphor about God calling the world into being, and I like to think of it as God singing the world into being. But what's great about it is after each time God makes something, God says, and that's good, and that's good, and that's good, and then at the end when God makes everything, God looks at the whole creation and says, that's very good. So the truth is that deep down, you scratch the away from everything, that at the core of it is good. The core of everything is good. So how do you tell a story that takes into account the innate goodness of the world with the brokenness, the sadness, the grief, the fear, the death that's all around us? In faith traditions, we tell these stories through ritual and through song and through celebration and in community. And so I think the way that we can kind of tell a story and know a story to ourselves is, first of all, to understand on our own way, what story are we telling about ourselves? Who are we? What's the story we tell about ourselves? Are you a business owner who has brought yourself up by your bootstraps? Are you someone who has stumbled through life and found yourself unexpectedly lucky from time to time? Are you someone who is sort of neither of those? What is your story? And figure out if that story still holds. If you're a business owner who's pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, your bootstraps just snapped off. So what are you doing? What's going on here? If you're someone who's always caught a lucky break just in time, you just caught an unlucky break. So what's going on here? How can we tell a story that encompasses all of this? And so I think first you've got to understand what story it is you're telling and whether that still fits with reality. And where it doesn't, wonder and explore. What does this brokenness tell me about the world? And what does this tell me about me? And I think a lot of what Alan was saying was really resonating with me, because she was talking about just, finding those moments of gratitude and kind of shifting your perspective, making a mental shift. One of my favorite little tidbits of Greek that I had to learn in seminary was that the word that we translate as repent, which I think of as one of those, someone standing on the side of the road with a big sign saying, repent, the end is near. Really, it means change your mind. So it's not just about, feel bad about yourself because you've done bad things. It is instead, there's a different reality than the one you're living in. We need to change our mindsets, to open up our minds to see how the world really is and to see that innate goodness. And so the task, I think, of storytelling is one of opening our minds and our hearts up to those moments that confirm the goodness in the world. And maybe that's, realizing that, that you're finding new ways of connecting with people. Maybe it's, telling those little stories and tidbits of how the earth itself is kind of sighing at this moment. Maybe it's in the renewed connections we're finding with one another and the ways in which we are reaching out and helping each other. Like that, that Mr. Rogers quote where he always says, whenever you see bad things on TV, look for the helpers. And if we focus on the helpers and not the chaos around us, we can actually see that there is good in this world. And a skeptic or someone might disagree and say, yeah, but there's a whole lot of bad. And if we wouldn't need helpers if there weren't so much evil in the world. And that's true. That's true. There are bad things in the world. But I think where my faith tradition takes me is not surprisingly, really what Paula was saying is that we're not promised that everything's going to be okay. Knowing that the world is good fundamentally doesn't mean that bad things don't happen to us. It means that when bad things happen to us, we're not alone in that. And that's not the end of the story. That the end of the story is always life and love. And if we're not there yet, then we're not at the end of the story yet. So we need to find ways of tapping into that story of hope, tapping into the reality of where we are. And a final word about hope, that sometimes we think that hope is a feeling, and it's a sort of a lightness. It's a who was it? I think Emily Dickinson called it like that, a thing with feathers. It might not be Emily Dickinson, might have been somebody else, but anyway. And it's sort of this light, fluffy emotion. But in my experience, hope is actually a jagged thing. Hope is really, really hard because when it's the last thing you have to hang on to, it hurts. When you're really down at the bottom of things and you've found the bottom, that's really hope right there. Hope is where we are right now because it's saying, okay, I'm scared because my loved ones might be falling ill. I'm scared because I might be falling ill. I'm scared because my business might be in trouble. I'm scared because I don't know if I'm going to be able to go out to the grocery store or anything like that. But here I am, taking another breath, stepping forward in another day. And that, in that simple act of stepping forward and reaching out, that's an act of hope. And if we can open our eyes to see that, then we can see the world with a really kind of a more mature story, a story that has maybe gotten rid of some of our earlier preconceptions that have told us that, everything's going to be fine if we just work hard enough, or that we're the masters of our own destiny, and all those things that are wonderful and will take us to a certain degree, but can easily be disrupted by something like this. So hope can be that thing that tells us the world can be very, very bad. Terrible things can happen, but they don't define me. They don't define the world. They are simply something that happens to me, and something that happens to me in which I am not alone, that I am accompanied not only by my fellow siblings, my fellow human siblings who are also walking through this, but in a faith tradition, you can say you're accompanied by God. You are accompanied by the ground of being, by the source of all that is. Because if the source of all that is really is what we believe God is, then there's no place we can go where we are apart from that. And that hope that we have is something that we can always, always, always cling to. And so my hope for each of us, for all those of us gathered here and for everyone else, is that we can find ways to tap into those moments of hope and use those to tell a story, first to ourselves, because you've got to believe it yourself. You've got to be told that story yourself, but also to tell the world, because as we each tell this story of life and of hope, overcoming suffering and brokenness, then that's how we kind of come together as a community and are able to continue to tell that story and keep on reaching out and finding those places so that this can slowly lift from all those of us who are suffering, whether we're experiencing the sprinkle or the full-on hurricane, that we can each kind of pull ourselves together, because it's when we have hope that we understand that this isn't the end. Because if this were the end, then yes, we'd be right to be hopeless. But it's not. This is not the full reality of who we are. Deep down at the bottom of our bones, we are beloved and worthy and good. And so is this whole crazy, mixed up world of ours. And that's the story I think that's most important for us to tell, is to remember that deep down at the bottom of things, we are beloved. So those are kind of my thoughts on all this time. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be with you all and to share this time with you. So thank you. And thank you so much to the Chamber for inviting me to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for chiming in. It is so important in a godly sense and also just a community sense to know that we're not alone and that we're all, together here, and just know that our friends are out there, and this has been a great way to connect. Lastly, I'd just like to open it up for questions or conversation or thoughts on what we've heard. It's been so refreshing to hear it from so many different perspectives.
I think one of the things is that, and I'm in fairly good shape as far as compared to some other people that are going through some tougher times through this. But I think the anxiety that I fear is now, as we start talking about coming out of this, is how is that done to balance where we have to get to, because the economy can't sustain what we're going through, and people can't sustain what we're going through. But how do we do that in balance with keeping people protected without a vaccine? That's what concerns me.
It feels like kind of a question for an epidemiologist.
Right.
But I would say that one of the things that seems to me really important in this time is to focus on what's most important, and kind of to fearlessly look at the worst case scenario and say, well, what if the public health needs require us to sort of shutter the economy for a longer period of time? What would that look like? And that is objectively terrifying. But I think that really looking at that can actually give us some strength, because it's kind of like in a horror movie. You don't see the monster, and that's when it's really, really scary. And then you sort of see the monster, and it turns out it's some extra in makeup, and it's not that scary, and because it's a known thing. And so I think when we really experience that and say, like, okay, well, if we are shuttered, or if our economy is shuttered for the next, I don't know, year, say, let me say the most terrifying thing I can think of. Well, what does that look like? Well, I got to think that people are pretty ingenious, and that we'll find ways of continuing to make sure that everybody has the bare necessities of life, and that the resources that we need are already around us. I mean, we're kind of proving that right now. So, and again, I'm not. This is not a details thing, but I think when it comes to kind of our inner mental health, to trust in the goodness of things first, and move from there into kind of exploring the details. I'll let other folks chime in.
I was thinking about when I shared the serenity prayer, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. And I do think that whatever happens in the future, that we can consider what we're going to do in response to that. Because I think even if things open up, I am imagining that a lot of people are still going to be very careful. There's a lot at risk. And so if we each kind of craft a plan or anticipate, much like when this all started and people started doing, grocery shopping a couple weeks out or whatever, and, the people who were hoarding, that wasn't helpful. But I think for us to think ahead, I know there are times when I get worried about the sort of 6-month projection or 4-month projection. So I try to just kind of say, okay, in the next month, what's that going to look like, and what can I do? I think sometimes taking action, even in a very limited way, can be helpful. to think about. And so just to have your own plan and the plan with our families and how we're going to respond, I think is really important, and what we personally are going to feel safe doing, and how we can care for one another. Because, you know, I love that Andrew said it's like that invisible monster. That's, I think, part of the frightening aspect of this, is that we cannot physically see it. We do not know, you know, where this infection is, or when we might, or, you know, could possibly contract it. So what are the steps that we could personally take? And the other thing is, we've talked a lot about gratitude, and I have also heard so many people trying to figure out ways, even in a very limited sense, how do we care for one another, our brothers and sisters? And so many people have been sending donations to the local food pantries, or trying to help our local small businesses. I mean, the chamber has this wonderful, what is it, pay now and use it later, Laura, I forget what it's called.
Yep, pay now, play later.
That's it. But to be aware, like in whatever small ways that we can support the people that we have done business with, and to care for them. I think when we are caring for others, you know, look for the helpers. But when we can help others in whatever small way, even if it's making homemade cards, sending them out to people that maybe could use a lift, I think that's just another way that it helps us feel in our own kind of small way that we are active in this process, and that we can take. We can figure out what our own agency is, if you will, and how we're going to respond. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, from a mindfulness perspective, it's always hard to not go into the future, not think about what's going to happen, but, you know, always coming back to the present moment and kind of asking yourself, am I okay right now? Is everything okay right now? And so coming back to the present, but also really being aware of your own feelings and your own thoughts, and really allowing them to be there, but trying not to get carried away into the future, which is really, really hard. But, you know, it's at the present moment is always the best place to be.
The only thing I wanted to add as well is first of all, it's always what's good in this, what's good today, and the uncertainty of the future is certainly something to consider. But metaphysically, if we look at the philosophy of thoughts become things, and what we think about, you know, comes about. And so if I spend my time, my days in that place of fear, and oh my gosh, what if? Oh my gosh, you know, it's going to be horrible, and I just keep going into that negative place, that's what I'll create. That I create my reality. And so when I'm looking for a situation, if I'm uncertain about the future, and I decide I want to look at it from a negative point of view, I can turn the TV on and I can ramp up and I can tell you all these horrible things and all these different things that people are saying, and I can pick up on every single thing that's happening. Or if I want to look at it from a different perspective, more of a positive perspective, I can look at all the ways people are being creative, all the humor that's coming out of this, all the things that people are giving to those that need, all the beautiful, wonderful things that are happening. And so it's really about, how do you choose to see the future? And I know that some people say, well, you know, that's a fairy tale, and it may be a bit, but if we're all looking to what's good and we're all putting out that energy of what's good, then those things will come about. And I believe that this it'll run its course. It'll do what it's meant to do for our in community, our world, our lives. And it's just, I think, relaxing a little bit with it and looking for what is coming out of this, what's the silver lining, what's good about it. And so that's where I'm at.
Helen, on that note, it's really funny because on Facebook, when we found out the May Day parade, the May Day had been canceled, you know, there was sadness to that, and we're allowed to be sad. And you know, I have a 9-month-old, so I was really excited for him to see his first parade on May Day. My husband jokes that this town has parades every week, so he'll have another parade. But I think things that maybe our community also took for granted, there's going to be such a greater appreciation for what our community is once this is all behind us. There's a lot of talk of nothing's going to go back to actual normal of what we think is normal. It's going to be a different normal. But at the same time, I feel like when we have that first celebration, or, you know, when we celebrate next May, our May Day, and just for thinking back to what we were dealing with this year, there is such an appreciation. And that's been the silver lining for me, is knowing that eventually we will be celebrating once again together, being able to give people hugs. I feel like hugging is going to be a huge thing once this is all behind us. You know, and I think that's really important. We're lucky to live in a community that I know will fight really, really hard to get these traditions back on the table and for us to be able to do them again.
Right, so we were able to find that the good, you know, that there's something about it. There's something that we all learn from it. There is a silver lining. And I'm always curious of what will the silver lining be, and how will our you know, our world look differently. So it's great.
Yeah, talking about kind of looking ahead to where things will be, one of the things we're doing at St. David's is, since we had to, you know, have Easter in exile this year, we've decided that whenever we go back to church, whatever the first Sunday is, we're able to gather again safely. We're going to have Easter then, and we're going to sing the songs. And if we have lilies, if we can still get lilies at that point, if it's July or whatever, we'll pack the church with lilies. If not, it'll be sunflowers or something. But you know, we're going to have Easter, and so looking ahead to those things that can you know, can kind of not be made up for, but it can say, look, when we do come back together again, how much sweeter will it be now that we've had this enforced absence? And there will be an element of grief in that too, because we'll be grieving the loss of the time that we had. But we'll be grieving the fact that, you know, Easter this year wasn't quite the Easter we were expecting. But again, it's that, you know, you've got to hold both those things in tension. You've got to hold the grief in tension with the hope and the reality of the goodness inside of how we look out. And yeah, the world that we look out and expect to see is what we will kind of create.
I think it's also hard when we look at something like traditions of a tradition like Easter, that when we're so accustomed to things being a certain way, that when they're different, we somehow don't think of them as good. And I think that's, for me, that's the downfall of traditions, is that when it's not exactly the same, then it's seen as something's wrong with it. But I think that I just wanted to say, I think that Easter has been or was a wonderful time, and that people just came together differently, and they were also able to celebrate differently, and that each day, I think, is it's different. There's uncertainty in it, but I still think that there's good in every day, and that we're learning so much about each other, that I just love that.
There's another kind of quote that seems kind of apt right now is that you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf, especially since we're a beach community.
Thank you, guys. I'm much more relaxed and not as overwhelmed.
Thanks, Laura.
Absolutely. So we have been recording this and we will be posting it on our website and Facebook. So please encourage any of your friends that may have missed it today to log on and check you guys out, because it was wonderful, wonderful. And also we have a list of resources at the Chamber, you know, should anyone need help. I think all four of our panelists have offered, you know, anybody to reach out to them. I can help people, you know, connect you, because we all are in this together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Laura.
Thank
And
you.
thanks for all the good work the Chamber's
Thank you so
doing
much.
to keep us together.